John, thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Steph.
So for everyone that's watching, you go by John Wineland.
Since I was
that is
born.
the name that you go by. I would love for you to give our audience, our students, a little background on who you are and how you've come to this space of being really a globally renowned, in my eyes and I think in the eyes of many, a globally renowned teacher in the art of relationships and intimate relating, sexuality, masculine, feminine dynamics and polarity, and so much more.
Right.
So please, go into as much detail as you want.
Yeah, okay. So like most people who come into the self-development world, I was my first client, and
Important point to note.
yeah, really, right? And so I came to this work because my marriage blew up. I was in a space where I was with a woman who loved me. I had a daughter. We had a little white picket fence house in Westwood, and yet I couldn't show up for her. She was miserable. I had everything that on paper, I was a leader in my community. Like it was what I would call now the myth of the good husband. Like I was a good provider. I was a good father. I supported her dreams, but I had no idea what it was like to really love a woman, to be devotional. I didn't know how to show up in a relationship, to be honest. And when that blew up, it was kind of this, aha moment of like, fuck, I do not know how to be in relationship. I do not know how to take care of a woman. I do not know how to take care of myself in relationship. And so I started to research it. I started to check out everybody I could from, I actually, it's so funny when I think about it. I am the dude that was watching Tony Robbins at 2 a.m, and I bought the little CD. I bought the infomercial, so man. This is, and I bought the CDs and I went to a Tony Robbins thing in New Jersey and I walked on fire and I was like, rah. And so I am that guy. So however students come to this stuff, because I realized like, I just don't know what to do here. And my family system was broken. My mother was married 3 times. My father was married 4 times. So we didn't have it. And so I hooked into the Tony Robbins world for about a year or so. And it eventually led me into the world of David Data, who's sort of the kind of the last word, I suppose, at least for 20 years or so, on masculine feminine dynamics and sexual polarity. And I went to a David Data workshop in 2008. And I was like, wow, this is a whole new way of looking at the world. I was introduced to this idea of embodiment. I was introduced to the idea of sexual polarity. I was introduced to these concepts of masculine, feminine dynamics and attraction. And it was like somebody pulled a veil up. And I could see like, wow, this is why relationships could work. This is why relationships don't work. This is how like massive amounts of love are created in a moment, in a way that's beautiful and artistic. And I just saw so much, and I was immediately like, okay, I'm in. And I literally followed David around for years and assisted him, finally co-taught with him. All the other people who were in that world, I followed them around. Michaela Boehm for a few years. Eli Buren, I just basically jumped in and learned as much as I could. And eventually, after about 7 years of being a student, I started to teach men's groups. And men's groups were kind of the way that I really wanted to learn, partly because I didn't have a strong father growing up. And it was just a way for me to deal with that wound. And I'm so glad I did, because, my greatest, you and I know each other through a men's group, that my dearest friends and the greatest support systems I've had have come through men's groups. So I started teaching men's groups, and then I went into teaching co-ed work, teaching men and women, teaching polarity practices. I had a bunch of women coming to me saying, what do men want? How does this occur? So I started teaching women. So I still do that, but I do it with other women, which is I think really crucial piece of a man.
Tell us why. Tell us why that's a crucial piece.
Yeah, because I don't have a female body, right? I don't have a cisgendered female body, and so it's I'm gonna miss stuff. Like what my value is in running a women's program, and I run a really beautiful women's program with three, now two other women, and I realize that there are a lot of things that I can't teach. I can't teach what it's like to have cervix. I can feel what it's like, and I can feel through my own feminine, a very dynamic, the dynamic feminine, but I do not have that experience. So I bring the perspective of as a man, here's how I'm feeling you. As a man, here's what I can tell you about other men. As a man, here's how I can give you structure that will help you cultivate your own masculine and also relate, how to deal with men, right? So that's my value in a women's group, but I need other women there to hold them.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
that's a big, and I also have other women. I don't teach. When I teach co-ed, I bring other women to teach the women because I just feel that there's a very deep reverence for women teaching women in that space.
Yeah, I think that's important for our students to understand that and know that when they're teaching from a particular place, that we can only really teach in the most authentic way. I'll say this another way. There is direct experience and teaching coming from direct experience, and there's teaching coming from indirect experience, right? Neither is wrong, or one doesn't necessarily carry less of a value than the other, but in certain circumstances, I believe it does. And what you're speaking to here is really important because we have many students that, say, male students that just wants to work with women. And that male student is struggling to connect to the context of what it means to be a woman. And there's this barrier there. How would you, if you're working with a student, as an example, if you're working with a coach, and that male coach is really connected to, I want to work with women, I want to help women understand men. How would you, and this is a big question, but how would you train that coach at the beginning stages of being on that journey to maximize his ability to relate to women as a client?
Yeah. So this is a huge piece of personal work that needs to happen, right? And part of the reason why I can work with women at all is because I've done so much work in understanding what women have gone through over the last 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 years. So I have a deep empathy for the feminine experience and for the female experience that I had to cultivate, that I'm still cultivating. Like there's still shit that I miss. I'm like, oh shit, there's my inherent patriarchy. There's my inherent misogyny that I missed, that I didn't quite recognize. And so any man that wants to teach women per se, first of all, I'd say, make sure you're really clear on what your gift is to them. Like I'm really clear in my groups, and I don't really coach women one-on-one anymore. I'll coach couples and I'll coach men mainly. But in groups, I'm very clear what my value is to them, right? My value is clarity, insight, wisdom, a connection to the feminine, both through my own body, my own experience, and just working with so many women for so long. So I'm really clear on that gift. I'd say the first step is get really clear on what you can offer them and make sure that you've cultivated it to a level that is, I want to say world class, but pretty fucking good. You know what I mean? Okay if I cuss and you're
fuck yeah, it is.
Okay.
We're not cutting that out.
Yeah, good. So I'd say make sure that your gift is very clear, right? And then the second thing is make sure you do the homework to understand what the female experience is, and not just assume you know it, but really try to understand what it is, and know that you're going to, if you're in that example, you're going to miss it. Same thing with women who want to work with men, which I see a lot of.
These days, yeah.
Yeah, I see a lot of that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it per se. I mean, look, the thing that most coaches miss is the shadow reasons as to why they're doing what they're doing. And in those two instances, women coaching men, men coaching women, you better be really clear on the shadow reasons why you want to get into that. You know, there's probably some very sincere, beautiful reasons.
For sure.
But if you aren't clear what the shadow reasons are. So for example, in my world, the shadow reason why I wanted to coach men was because my father was absent, right?
You were tending to heal a wound
yeah.
that was unresolved within you.
Yeah. And
We
what I
teach what we
didn't
need to
get,
learn
what
the
I
most.
didn't get from the masculine as a child, I was trying to get from the men in a men's group, right?
Yeah. Now pause there for a moment. This is interesting.
Yeah.
What happens if you're not aware of that shadow element of self is that as coaches, we can become forceful in our desire for that individual to achieve something or reach a certain point, right?
We will get triggered by the same thing that we didn't get, right? So for example, the way it showed up for me when I first started teaching men was that it would show up in if men didn't do what they said they were going to do, which my father did not do, right? And most of the men that I grew up with did not do. Then I would get triggered, right?
Yeah.
And I'd get in their face. Now there's the healthy part of that, but it's only healthy if I'm able to extrapolate my shadow from like the impulse to challenge.
I think it's the come from. I think your come from, if it's coming from a known, healthy, integrated place, a whole place, then you being direct or getting in someone's face is a deliberate, conscious choice.
Yes.
It coming from unresolved wounding means that you now are in their face.
I'm dumping my
activated.
childhood. I'm dumping my childhood wound on them and calling it coaching.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'll go a little farther because I think this would be helpful for your students. So what I had to find out in my teaching couples, what I was healing was the wound of my broken family. Right. I was healing the wound of my broken family. And so where it would come up is a sense of attachment to them staying together or them working it out, when in some cases that wasn't the right move, right? Or a sense of failure if they didn't, right? And really what my job is with couples is to create new possibilities, help them break patterns and create new possibilities of love and connection and depth and intimacy and sexual charge and attraction and all those things. But beyond that, you know, if I start to reach beyond that into too much of their dynamic, now I'm playing a therapist, which I am not a therapist. I teach, I coach, right? So that impulse came from my broken family, right? With women, the desire to save my mother, right, was the shadow impulse that I had to get really clear on. And I think anybody who steps into a coaching realm, especially in the realms of intimacy, relationship, masculine, feminine dynamic, sexual intimacy, better do the fucking homework to understand, and better do the deep inner work themselves to understand what's driving the bus beyond the supposed, desire to do good.
Sure.
Yeah.
So many different avenues we can take with this.
Yeah, we're dumping a lot here.
No, it's great though. It's great. So early on, you mentioned the word devotion. It stuck with me, right? You mentioned the word devotion in context to your practice and basically your path, right? How important is devotion when in the client-coach or coach-student, teacher-student relationship?
So I think I would need to back up to answer your question properly, because devotion itself is, the question that I think all teachers have to ask is devotion to what, right? What am I devoted to? Am I devoted to love? Am I devoted to consciousness? Am I devoted to growth? Am I devoted to, sacred union? What am I in devotion? Am I devoted to money? Am I devoted to Instagram fame? Am I devoted, really to be clear on what our devotion is to? And so when I, in answering your question, I think I would first have to be clear on, what I'm truly devoted to. And then be aware again of this, always tracking the shadows, right? So of course there's a part of me that wants to be successful and wants to make money and wants to, have impact and to some degree fame, although less and less am I wanting that. But my true devotion is to love. And that's very clear for me, that when I'm working with people, I'm really working with I'm trying to liberate love. So with that in mind, their preferences, their patterns, their habits, their excuses, They're, you know what I mean? All those things don't mean shit to me because I am devoted to love. And sometimes, I will ruffle people's feathers because I'm not devoted to their story or I'm not devoted to their pattern. So I think if you're devoted to love and consciousness, which is I do feel I am, then my devotion is to that, not to the student.
So in certain,
I might love the student, I might care for them, I might be, but my devotion is liberating them, liberating that in them, and liberating the part of them that wants to serve love and devotion. So that's my agenda, and so people who feel the truth of that are drawn to me. People who have other things they're devoted to are drawn to other people.
So many questions I have right now. The first is, in certain non-dual Vedantic texts, it is said that desire, there is nothing intrinsically or inherently wrong with desire. The issue is that we desire too much too often at the same time, right? And if we just limit our desires and we streamline, I'm using my language, we streamline our desires, what can tend to happen is that we feel a greater contentment and peace within us because we're not so overwhelmed with wanting all these things. My question to you is devotion almost synonymous with that principle of desiring a single channel of desire, a single channel of devotion? Can we be over devoted as coaches? Because this is an issue in the space, right? We want to do all the things and we want to be everything for everyone.
Right. Well, I don't think they're the same thing. Being devoted to love and being everything for everyone, I don't think are the same thing.
I completely agree. Yeah, for sure. But you mentioned various devotions in you were giving examples, which are great. Now, you were talking, I'm like, I'm devoted to all of that as well. So does that mean if I am devoted to all of that and I'm putting all of my energy in all of those areas, I'm basically not devoted to anything?
No, I would argue you're devoted to, so meta, I mean, I'd speak for myself.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not sure I think I know what you're devoted to, but meta, I'm devoted to consciousness, which is awareness.
Likewise.
Right, which is awareness, right? So awareness of pattern, awareness of shadow, awareness of impact, awareness, right? So liberating consciousness as awareness in my clients and my students is a very important, value of mine. I am devotional to that. Sometimes to my detriment, sometimes to their detriment. You know what I mean? Like,
give me an example of your detriment, their detriment.
More like I'll try to this is a sort of an advanced lesson here, but if you are trying to liberate someone's awareness into consciousness who is not consenting to that level of depth,
or they're not ready for it,
or they're not, for all kinds of reasons, right? They're not ready for it, but they're not saying, yes, I want my delusion to be liberated. I want my awareness to be sharpened. I want my consciousness sharpened. If they're not in that space, they're like, I want to make money, I want to be famous, I want to then I'm overstepping, right? Yeah. I'm overstepping my role as a teacher and a coach. And I've had lessons around that, even recent ones, right? Where I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm wanting love and conscious. I'm wanting them to see this more than they are. Like, I'm operating on what I would consider, a sacred level, and they're still like operating in a material level.
Yeah.
And not that I'm sacred all the time, but I feel like I've tapped into something where I can feel and intuit, what the sacred line is. So that would be to my detriment. To their detriment is, I'll blow up some belief system that they've used to support themselves
prematurely,
either prematurely or painfully for them to. I mean, ultimately, most growth comes from somebody pointing out, some teacher pointing out pain, and not all. This is a different thing. Like, my teachers used challenge, let's say, and sort of painful lesson to teach. That's less and less desired, and I think what's happening is that there's going to be a happy medium where praise and support is one pillar, and challenge and and busting through delusion is another pillar. And the capacity to do both, I think, is really important for the modern teacher, to be able to both support and love. Like, that's what I do with a lot of my teacher trainers. I'm really trying to create a way to support them and encourage them, but at the same time, we're challenging their shadows. We're challenging their delusions. And so I'm trying to find that perfect balance of those two modalities of teaching. I kind of drifted a little bit from your question, but I think that's kind of an important thing for anybody who's thinking about what kind of teacher do I want to be, right? Do I just want to be somebody who's just a cheerleader? Because you see that all the time, and the problem with that is that there's no real attempt at busting people's patterns or delusions.
You're just joining their echo chamber and echoing what they already know. Which is not what they need in order to transform or transmute. And so I really appreciate how you've shared that and what you're saying. And I'll share something in my immature stages of coaching and guiding people and supporting people in the way that I do now. I would be very forceful as coaches, we are coaches, or we're teachers, we're guides, whatever label you want to place on yourself, because we see something that someone else can't. Like, it's why I go to someone. Like, if I come to you for advice, I'm coming to you because you can see the forest through the trees where I can't. Like, that's basically what it is. And I trust your perspective for all the different reasons. Previously, and years ago, I was so committed to me seeing something and them seeing what I'm seeing that it's not that I didn't care, I just was oblivious to whether they were ready or not. And I would be forceful. And then when they couldn't meet me there, or they couldn't understand me or understand what I was saying, instead of backing off, I would force my idea even more, because as a kid, this is the shadow element of coaching coming through. As a kid, I didn't feel understood. I felt rejected a lot. I felt humiliated when I wasn't understood. And as an adult, I became bigger and stronger and louder, and I wanted to exert my authority. So
when your clients don't understand you, you're gonna
Now what I do is very different. If I see something, I ask them to come into the shallows. It's a request. If they still can't get it, we move on. I'm not attached to them needing to see or know something right here, right now. Like, when people are ready, they'll be ready. And it's not to say that I don't try or I don't take different angles in different ways. I'm just not forceful. It's a big, we're going to lead into somewhere here. This is a big mistake I see so many coaches make, because I've made it. Because our worth and our value as a coach and as a human being is tied up in us getting an outcome for someone. Having that big peak experience. I'd love for you to talk to the pitfalls of that as a coach being tied to the breakthrough.
You just really elucidated it perfectly, right? Because your childhood wound. So it's an art, man. Being able to back off and then come in and back off and then invite in. Part of what is essential is that you do have to get consent. Like, hey, can I turn up the flame here? Can I tell you what I'm seeing? I mean, this is sort of what I do. Can I tell you what I'm seeing? Can I tell you my intuition here? Throw it out if you don't like it.
Very similar to what I said.
And that gives them permission to throw it out if they don't like it.
It empowers them. As clients, as a sovereign being, it empowers them to say, yes, tell me what you're seeing. Well, no, I don't want to know.
Yeah. Which is, I'm going to pay you, $90,000 a year, but I don't want to know what you see. Which is kind of silly. So getting the consent, just helps kind of break through. And this is actually a shamanic practice, right? Of getting permission to go into somebody's energy field, to go into somebody's subconscious, to go in with intention and with clarity, and being able to navigate that takes just a lot of reps.
So many reps.
The 10,000 hours of really being in people's subconscious, especially in the realm of relationship, which I spend so much time in, working in that, seeing how people open and close, what they're hiding, how to get to that little piece that wants to express itself so it can heal. That takes time. And I think people are, to answer your question about the peak experience, I think there's nothing wrong with getting people to the breakthrough. That's beautiful. Sure. It's beautiful. but to be attached to it, like you said,
That's the issue.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
To be committed to it, to be a stand for
devoted
it,
to it.
to be devoted to it. Yeah. And the breakthrough in my, just to use the vernacular I was using, is just a conscious balm. Like when you have a breakthrough, you're aware of something, you're aware of it, and chances are, so I like this idea of taking the breakthrough and talking about consciousness and love, right? So the breakthrough is an explosion of consciousness, an explosion of awareness, and a love of something greater than your pattern.
Do you delineate, sorry to interrupt you, do you delineate between awareness and consciousness? Because we've used both terms in a sentence.
Well, yes.
Explain that for everyone.
So awareness, as I describe it, and I'm sure other people have done the same, is really the tool of consciousness. Consciousness is we could get into the masculine and feminine piece of this. So in the way that I was taught this is that consciousness is the ever expanding, unchanging realm of awareness that is where this experience we're having is coming from. Right? Nothing is happening outside of the realm of consciousness. My consciousness, your consciousness, it's all like, right? Then there's the realm of experience, right? Which is everything happening all the time, trillions of cell experiences happening in each of our bodies, the sound, the ocean, the experience we're having now. All of that is what I would call the feminine, right? And the masculine is the conscious field through which that experience becomes known. So awareness is the tool of consciousness, but consciousness itself is unchanging. It's the divine. I mean, I would call it, I do believe in the dualistic approach to this, which is that the divine, the mystic law has an unchanging, ever-present core to it, and an aspect that's always changing, the latent and the manifest, we could call it, right? And so in masculine practice, we go deeper and deeper into conscious awareness. In feminine practice, we go deeper and deeper into feeling. And ultimately, really deep spiritual practice is the amplification of both and the unification of both moment to moment. Right, which probably a little more than your students need to know right now, but I do think it's an interesting.
It's nice to touch on that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting approach. Just a point on the Vedantic piece you made. I think the Vedantic traditions were masculine.
Very well.
Created by men.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So created by men, and the masculine is always going to create non-dualistic. Every non-dualistic tradition, I think, is masculine.
There's dual Vedanta as well, and there's non-dual Vedanta too. I just adhere and align more with the non-dual principles, which are very similar to what you're speaking to, but you're calling them dual. But the difference, I believe, is that there is one unchanging, permanent consciousness, and everything else is a reflection, mirror, or extension of that. And because it's a reflection, mirror, or extension, therefore it is not non-dual. There is only one reality, one permeating reality. So what appears to be dualistic really isn't. Simply an extension of.
Except when you're in the human body.
Yes, I agree. We're in the 3D realm, right? Yes. But that's the whole point. It's this dualistic reality that we live in of opposites. That is how we learn in this richness. And it's a coming back to oneness. I don't want to get too deep.
We can go down the rabbit hole, man. People will be like, what the fuck are they talking about?
This is not this is not what I'm meant to be watching right now. Well, let me come back to something which is really cool that you said earlier. So we just don't go down that rabbit hole. You mentioned challenge, and this is really important for a coach, I believe. Like the challenge, holding the challenge and holding the support and the loving, I'm using my word, but the loving witness, the care, right? I believe both exist. And I think as a coach, the more range we have as a coach, the more range we have as an individual.
Yeah.
Emotional range, spiritual range, psychological range, and that includes our ability to delve into our shadows and our equal ability and our profound ability to also celebrate ourselves. Because a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this, I'm not great at celebrating myself. And that is linked to my shadow in some way and to unresolved stuff. But we have to equally celebrate ourselves and also delve into our shadows. So in shamanic traditions, as you expressed earlier, that permission to go into what is closed within an individual. Because I see that as if we're closed, we're attracted. So neurologically, we may be in a sympathetically activated nervous system response. Psychologically, we carry a fear or hold a fear. So we are retracted and contracted in our being. And that shamanic tool of may I enter your psychic space?
Yeah.
May I support you through something? May I see something? May I share
feel
something?
into your body.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of that is a gentle invitation or request to open and to move into that more desirable state of being. And this is where you're lovingly holding that space. We're going to get into holding space in a moment. I have opinions on this. This is really important as a coach, holding space, but lovingly holding that space for that person, but also challenging them to go into unknown places because there's so much magic there. So I just wanted to highlight what you said earlier. And I am personally in agreement with you in terms of as guides, teachers, individuals as friends and family, like we hold the right to fucking up-level each other and up-level ourselves. And I think part of that is, can I challenge you lovingly, but can I also hold you and not have to challenge you lovingly? Maybe I don't have to get into your face. Maybe I don't have to be forceful or push you even from a quote-unquote healthy place. Or maybe if we're forceful, that counts as not being healthy, but not to push someone and to know, to ebb and flow between, I've got to go a little harder here as a guide, as a leader, as a coach. I've got to pull back a little bit and allow this person the dignity of their own experience.
Yeah.
Any comments on that? And secondly, your definition of holding space as a coach.
Okay, so I'm going to link back just for a moment to what we were just discussing. So up-leveling somebody from your own pattern, which we were talking about earlier, means that you are not connected to consciousness. You're not connected to something deeper. The field, you're not connected to the field of awareness that is greater than your thought patterns, that's greater than your habits, right? And so trying to up-level somebody without having some tether to consciousness and some connection to a deep-hearted love for them, right? In some form or fashion, whether it's a student, a lover, a partner, a friend, whatever it is, being disconnected from those and trying to up-level while you're disconnected is oftentimes your pattern just playing itself out.
Can we even escape our patterns?
Yes and no. I think what we do is we get space, right? So so literally, I'll make this super practical. So by me, if you were a client of mine and you were asking me advice, I would be feeling, and when I teach, I do this as well, I'll feel the part of myself that's unchanging and infinite consciousness as I'm talking to you. Like you can probably feel me looking at me, you can feel me feeling it. Yeah, right? When you feel that...
You're in deep curiosity.
Yeah, I'm in deep curiosity, and I'm also having a thread to the infinite. Yeah. And then add to that, my love for you and just my desire. Now these are all happening through my body, right? And as I'm tapping into them, my ability to impact you and coach you through a deep experience is enhanced. Not only can I trust myself more and what's coming through me, but you will trust me more. And so when we talk about love and consciousness, these are not just esoteric ideas. Like these are embodied experiences that make you a better teacher, a deeper coach, a better lover, you know what I mean? A better friend. And they require awareness of my heart, right? Awareness of love pulsing through my heart infinitely all the time, never stops. Awareness of consciousness, the field that, is just always expanding, bright, beautiful, full, complete. And my awareness of that while I'm interacting with other, whether it's the woman at Starbucks or a $100,000 a year client, makes me more impactful. So I think just to kind of tie a bow on the whole love and consciousness piece is that they're very practical and they're very applicable, like any yoga or martial art or meditative practice, in the coaching realm. And I think what we're starting to see, I'm sure you're seeing it, I'm sure you bring it into your coaching, I know I do, is that coaches are less about strategy now and more about transmitting, greater ways of being than strategy.
You want to hear something interesting on that, John? This just came to me now. I used to focus a lot on strategy, and as a result of that, focus on all my credentials, right? And I'm being very clear here. I'm not saying don't become certified and don't study. Definitely study. Definitely be a student. But I was so wrapped up in that, and as a result of that, every client or potential client I would have, I would notice consistently asking me, "Oh, so what have you studied? What are your credentials? What are your modalities? How do you operate?" I don't even think I get anything close to that question now because I've let that go so much, and I operate from a more, I know a more embodied place, a clear place of what I have to offer and what I'm actually tapping into when I'm working intimately with someone. I think that's a very important point to note for anyone that is on this path of wanting to be a guide and a teacher, that there is more than just modalities and structure, and all of that is important in this world. Absolutely, I believe that. And there is a depth in presence that comes from tapping into things that are beyond us.
Yes.
And the only, I would say, I don't want to say the only way, do I want to be absolute? Let me just say it, let's see how it rolls.
Okay.
The only way to truly tap into that is to do our inner work.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the only way. I wouldn't say it's the only way.
I want you to say something different.
But I do think it requires practice. Right? It's not something, it's again, like coaches up until the last 10, 15, 20 years, right? We're coaching on, based on strategic elements, anything from NLP,
Sure.
Tony Robbins, right? Or, business strategy or, so strategy was the way. And what I think has shifted in our generation of coaches is that we've discovered there's a divine element to wisdom and to impact that happens through the body. So, I guess I would call what I do, a form of embodiment coaching, form of embodiment. It's definitely embodiment work. And so we've realized as coaches that the transmission of the divine, let's call it the divine, I'm going to even go there, like something greater than my pattern, something greater than my thoughts, something greater than my drama, the divine is crucial in taking people to deep places. And I think most of the people that are probably coming to you intuit that, maybe they don't fully grasp it yet, but I imagine they intuit it. And I will say straight up here, like, I'm a fucking bait and switch. People come to me saying, help with my relationships, help with my purpose, and I'm like, yeah, here's the divine. Like, how are you serving the divine? How are you serving love? How are you serving consciousness? And many of them love it and stay for years and years and years. And many of them go, no, I want
They're not quite
my
ready
pattern
for that.
Yeah, I want my pattern. I'm not ready to let go of my binky.
Binky, that's such a cute word.
Yeah.
What a great word, binky.
Yeah, I don't know, binky.
It's so cute.
So, and that's cool. That's fine. I certainly wasn't ready to let go of my binky for many years.
I'm certain I still
I still have some binkies. I still have some binkies. Yeah.
So let's talk a little about masculine and feminine polarity and relationships. So we have students and individuals that are really interested in relationship coaching and coaching couples. Now, I would also say that we've got to earn our penance in that area because managing one personality and all of its substructures can be challenging. Then when you have two people that have been in dynamic for a lengthened period of time, can even be more challenging.
Yeah.
And so being a coach, and we touched on this earlier, and being a leader of this couple and being a stand for them in whatever they are desiring, and which sometimes what they're desiring may be blinded, right? And so it's part of our role to see beyond that, but also to see what they are requesting and where they're coming from. It can be really challenging, right? So again, we have to be really, really grounded in our own presence, in our own being, and clarity around that. What would you share with beginner coaches that are new to the relationship coaching, that are looking at, I want to be an embodiment coach, or I want to be a love, intimacy, and sexuality coach, or I want to be a relationship coach.
Yeah.
And I know that's a big question, but but just maybe some, not just modalities, but an approach to take.
I'll give a framework that I think would be helpful. Yeah. I've come up with a framework. I'm writing another book. I just had a book come out, and I'm writing another book. First book was for men.
Speak to your book that just came out as well.
It's called From the Core. It's basically everything I've learned about men's work and my own and teaching it, and I put it into a book.
Fantastic.
It's out there now.
And that is also, I believe, I've been reading parts of it as I ordered it. I personally think it's fantastic for women, helping women understand
the masculine,
the collective masculine, the core essence of the collective masculine, and men,
I think so too.
Yeah.
So I'm writing a book that's about co-ed work, and so I've been thinking about this framework, like what are the pillars of sacred intimacy, and any one of these pillars can be a full modality that you go into. In fact, they are, right? So the first one is intimacy, which is that, I'm love, you are love. Like that we're the same, right? So to be intimate is to recognize sameness. Like I have a heart, you have a heart. I'm afraid, you're afraid. I am consciousness and love, and you are consciousness and love. Ultimately, it's the resonance practice. It's the gazing into each other's souls and seeing the sameness in each other's souls. It's the recognition of oneness. It's oneness, right? So intimacy. That's a whole, meal in and of itself in terms of practice, in terms of modalities, in terms of teachers and teachings, and so that piece has to be really solid. The capacity of soul recognition, right, and oneness
in self and other.
Between me and you, if we were a couple, that would be us recognizing that means that we see beyond the surface of each other.
For sure.
Yeah, we know each other's depth, right?
And there is also, would you say that in your modality or in this practice, in this ethos, there is also a recognition for each other's wounds and proclivities and values and pain and trauma and all of that as well.
Our humanity. Right. So it's both, intimacy is both a recognition of shared humanity and deep essence. That's how I would describe it.
And that is so beautifully loaded. And I am in relationship at the moment, and that is work, man. That is effort.
That is super incredible. So that's where the realm of therapy and like really creating resonance, sometimes breath work, sometimes conscious eye gazing and soul gazing and all those things like that. That would be just easy examples of that. So that's the first pillar. That has to be strong. That has to be very strong. The second pillar is what I would call devotion to others' nervous system, right? Like devotion, to be devotional to your partner's nervous system means that you are devotional to them, moving them from sympathetic fight or flight or freeze mode, which is childhood wound, living in the world today, to a parasympathetic openness. So your devotion is to their nervous system. And then now this is the modality of touch and breath and all kinds of ways of putting their nervous system ahead of you being right in an argument. Hard as fuck to do consistently, but when it happens, it changes everything in a relationship. And if it can't happen, it will end a relationship. I was just in a relationship where it couldn't happen. It's no matter how we tried, we could not do that piece. And it just, no matter how much love was there, it wouldn't work. So that's the second pillar, is that devotion.
May I also, thank you for that. May I also just give a personal example on that, which I think may be helpful for people watching. That devotion, commitment, that love for your partner's nervous system is everything, man. And for me personally, and I
especially with a new baby, for sure.
Man, that's why I've got tears in the back of my eyes right now. I feel my reactivity coming up, and I make it about me, and I'm not making it about her nervous system. And in that moment, I'm not even making it about mine. I'm making it about my past. I'm making it about my pain. I'm making it about being autonomic in reacting and behaving like my father did. And instead of actually seeing Christine for the discomfort that she's in and just pausing and slowing down, I become hyper defensive because I become so threatened. And when, like you said, with a baby,
No idea what you're talking about, man. yeah.
everything, I'm like hyper alert.
Yeah.
And so we had a deep conversation 2 days ago around, you know, in the BDSM world, use this as an example, there's safe words and there's layers and levels of safe words, right? So, well, why can't we have safe words in our intimate emotional communion, in our communication? And so we have a safe word now when I see, and this is vice versa for her, when I experience her doing something that's threatening, instead of being reactive, shutting down or being abrasive or being rude or being impatient or raising my voice and being sharp, I say the safe word.
It's a blueberry or something.
It's sourdough.
Yeah.
And so we both pause and we just slow down for a moment. We can literally take a physical step back, create some space, as you mentioned earlier. There's so much power in that physical space, and just breathe slowly for a moment. And then really sit with the question of, you know, what would love do now? In reference to each other's nervous system. She's thinking that for my nervous system, I'm thinking that for her. And by default, we are attending to how we want our nervous systems to be. So I love that is one of your pillars.
Yeah. Because for a number of reasons. A, like you just described, it's really hard work. It's basically, I'm choosing your nervous system over my pain body.
Yeah,
and
it's so familiar.
It is, it's so habitual. And yet it is, I would consider it deep spiritual practice, because when you're, you know, we can do it with our babies. You know, you're not gonna, you know, we can do it with our babies. And if we don't, you know, our babies will really feel it. So, but to do it with your romantic partner takes a very deep discipline and awareness and commitment to, I mean, this is why I call it a devotional practice, because I really feel it is a devotional practice. And what you just described that you guys do is being devotional to each other's nervous system, above being right, above getting your point across, above, you know, blasting them with your pain body.
Yeah.
So yes, I consider that. It wasn't originally a pillar of mine, but I've just seen it that it's so crucial to make your partner feel safe in the world, in the moment, and with you. Imagine what gets fixed. Imagine imagine just that in and of itself is probably a lifelong journey, right? So, and all of these I need to say, all of these are lifelong journeys filled with failure and recommitment. Nobody is going to nail this. I'm not an expert. I'm not perfect in it. You're still working on it. Well, you know, again,
definitely not perfect.
For sure. Failure and recommitment to it.
The recommitment piece, man.
Yeah.
Let's just stay on this pillar for a little longer. This is great. Would you and could you share, as a coach working with someone and wanting them and explaining to their clients, their couple that they're working with, hey, the commitment to your partner's nervous system is so important. Here's why, which I think we've expressed and explained, because we're helping heal childhood wounds at such a deep place.
We're changing their brain chemistry.
Oh, massively. Their
brain
physiology
chemistry,
shifted.
Physiology, hormones, their capacity to take in new information, all of that.
And the
shifts.
repetition of that.
Yeah.
Now that person moves through the world and feels less threatened.
Yeah.
Their threat funnel has gone from everything is a threat to I feel safer in the world.
Yeah.
Let me open up my body a little more.
Yeah.
Let me open up my heart to love.
Yeah.
Let me be seen.
Yeah.
And maybe even let me see something that I have not been able to see. So all of that is so important.
Yeah.
Would you and could you recommend any specific practices? And I know it would vary from couple to couple, but some really fundamental, foundational practices that help others. And I gave one earlier with the safe word and so forth, and the process that we go through, but anything else that would help them navigate each other's nervous system. Because here's an interesting thing. We know that when we get into partnership with someone, particularly partnership, but even in intimate friendships as well, their nervous systems are attuned to ours and ours attuned to theirs. As a result of that, their activated triggers, their reactivity, there's something there for us. Because if it activates us in a particular way, it's more than likely doing so from a place of we have something unhealed or that needs to expand and open, and that is the catalyst for it.
Yeah, where imago matches even as friends.
Massively. And so we forget though that there's something in it for us. And then we think our coach or our therapist says, hey, maybe you could do this for your partner. We think, well, why? It's always about them. What about me? In actual fact, by you doing that thing for your partner and attending to their nervous system, you're doing something for yourself. You're changing.
You're healing your own nervous system.
Big time. Big time.
So I'll give you a couple really concrete examples. So let's say you're in a discussion with your partner. She says something or he says something that triggers you. Your initial sympathetic reaction is you're going to talk faster and your breath is going to get more shallow. So you just the moment you slow your voice and you take some deep breaths, right? And you just start breathing deeper. That is going to down-regulate their nervous system. Now, because when people get fearful, their energy literally rises in their body, right? So if you put your hands on their legs and you say safe concepts like, I'm not going anywhere, baby. And you just slow I'm here with you. I love you. We're going to work this out.
That works both for a woman saying that to a man as well.
Of course,
right?
yeah. In the realm of nervous system, masculine, feminine goes way out the fucking window.
I love that you just said that. We're going to come back to that. Thank you.
Yeah, because masculine, feminine is
secondary.
It's secondary for this. So for this, everybody's nervous system is the feminine. Everybody's nervous system.
From the principles you discussed earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if somebody is able to bring awareness and love, they're bringing their own awareness, they're bringing their own capacity. I would say they're utilizing their masculine in a really beautiful way. If your nervous system starts to upregulate and get twitchy, and I'm bringing breath and awareness and slowing down, the slower I go, the more masculine I get, right? And women, men, doesn't matter. So either partner. Diverted a little bit, but so touching them, saying the things that you know, for example, you're not wrong. I don't think you're wrong. That's a huge safety phrase, right? Or I'm not leaving, or I love you. I'm with you. You're my girl. You're my man. I'm here with you, right? I'm here. And you breathe. I see you. Perfect.
I care for you.
Yeah. I'm here. And so any of those with slower breath, with slower speech, with appropriate touch, especially on the lower body because that grounds them, that will immediately, and it takes 30 seconds, a minute, it doesn't take long. And just that practice alone will change the dynamic of so many relationships.
Thank you for sharing that. So we teach principles of neuroception in our cohorts, in our curriculum, and part of that is just that, is exactly what you just said. It's helping by slowing your nervous system down or regulating your nervous system. You are increasing the chances immensely of regulating another person, or their system just attuning to yours and regulating also. Yeah,
it really is a superpower that I think people are really. The way I describe it in my teacher training is I'm using my practice to impact your nervous system and change your experience of the moment, right? And so that gives me that also gives me. That's what I'm looking for. It's incentive for me to get good at my practice, right? Sure. Because if I can't breathe or I can't slow down in the moment, then I'm obviously, I don't have enough practice in my own body to impact you.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point as well. So, I mean, for me, personally, So
wait, let me say one more thing on that, Steph, because this is really crucial for new coaches, right? Because they'll hear this and they'll get the concept and they'll be like, fuck yeah, I love that. I'm going to do that. Yeah. But if they don't have the practice of breath and body awareness in their own body, when the moment comes, they will not have it to draw on. So the difference between, say, just being a coach, understanding intellectual knowledge, and being a coach, being able to bring experiential change,
an integrated embodied coach,
has to bring their own practice, and that often is where I see a big split between people who become, masters and super impactful, and people who just kind of spout what they've learned without any real transmission.
Yeah, that's big, man. And what I wanted to say earlier is that you may think you have it. So what's that old adage? If you think you're enlightened, I think Ram Dass said that if you think you're enlightened, go home for a week and spend time with your family.
Yeah,
or
something
right?
like that. Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
And I personally am. We're going to come back to the holding space piece, but I'm just going to use the generic term. Everything you've described, I can do with great proficiency and efficiency. Now, in my romantic partnership, I can do it, and I do it. But let me tell you something. I am not as proficient when I'm holding a room for 1,000 people, 10,000 people, There's a big difference. And so what I'm hearing you say very specifically is you've got to be able to do it with yourself and do it in circumstances where that you've previously found quite challenging to you.
Yeah. And your intimate relationships are the space of the Vietnam of your psyche, right?
I love that.
So being able, and also too, I want to lower the bar on that one, right?
Sure.
Because again, like if you're successful 2 out of 10 times where you were not successful at all, 10 out of 10
progress, man.
and then next year you're 3 out of 10 times, you know what I mean, and you just make little progress. That is monumental shift in the dynamic of the relationship, and eventually it will become a thing where, look, if you're successful half the time in your intimate relationships, in what we're talking about, you are world class. You're in the Hall of Fame, man.
Oh.
And so that is it's to me, it's really the training ground, the proving ground of our practices. And I also think, and I just learned this myself, is that our intimate partners literally show us our edge of our practice.
Of course.
Like I thought, oh, I can hold space for blah, blah, blah. I can hold space and da. And then what comes into my life? An intimate partner that shows me exactly where I can't. Thank God, right? Thank God, because, I need that. And if we look at our intimate partners less as adversaries and more as, sent from the heavens to show us where our practice limitations lie, I think that's also just a little reframe that's important.
Well, when we're able to carry the capacity to say thank God to our partners or to ourselves in the moment of our partners taking us to our edges, that to me is expansive growth. That to me is an indicator that, wow, as an individual, you have expanded yourself. Because it's a lot easier to say it 1 minute later, 10 minutes later, 4 hours later, 3 days later.
Right.
But to do it in the moment, that is an indicator of inner progression, of consciousness expanding, of us being more regulated and more grounded, of us. It is a byproduct of us doing our inner work.
Yeah. It's the inner work, and I'll keep saying, because the way I teach things are in yogic practice, martial art practice, meditative practice. Those things actually do change your body's, your nervous system's capacity, your window of tolerance.
For sure.
Right?
We teach that as well.
Yeah.
It's fantastic that you use that term.
Yeah, because so that for those people who want to become powerful coaches, it's why, in my programs, 70% are experiential. You come to my workshop, 60 to 70%, we're practicing.
Right.
Because ultimately, me telling things is only going to land so much unless you experience it.
Yeah.
So
I very much hear that. And so, we've circled on holding space. I keep saying we're going to come back to it. Let's just come back to it now.
Let's
before
do it,
you go into the third pillar. I'm going
we'll have to edit the third pillar in, so we got to deal with this.
How many pillars are there, by the way?
3.
3. Oh,
Yeah,
great. Okay.
3,
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So, but let's get into holding space. So I've got my perspective on it. I want to hear, unless you want to hear mine first, I want to hear yours. And the fuckery that is holding space in the spiritual transformational world.
Yeah, man, it is fuckery. Let me give you what I think the proper approach is. So holding space is a yogic practice. It means I am feeling the room, or feeling the partner, or feeling the person. Using my feeling body awareness to lock into the experience, the place, the practice, and I'm using my consciousness to wrap around the space. So I'm literally feeling the space and wrapping awareness and consciousness around the space and through the space. Now, there's a second piece to that, which is once I'm doing that, and so let's say I'm working with a client, right, or a partner, I'm making love, right? I'm feeling them, I'm wrapping my consciousness around them, but I'm also feeling through them into the infinite. And if I can stay in that to me is the sort of pinnacle of holding space, to literally feeling them, wrapping consciousness around them, and then feeling through them into the infinite.
I'm going to say, I think what I perceive to be something very similar in a different way. So for me, when we use the term holding space in any context, whether it's in an intimate relationship or in a teacher-student relationship, whatever that may be, if someone comes to us with pain or challenge or difficulty, and we are triggered and activated by that, and we cannot regulate ourselves in our nervous system, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and we claim to be listening and holding space, we're not holding space. We're allowing our triggers that have been amplified by our environment, i.e. this person coming to us, to infiltrate that moment and not actually be a safe space. And so for me, holding space is having done inner work, having a raised level of consciousness and awareness, being in one's expanded body to know that it is about them, that they are coming to us because they perceive us to be safe. Can we be in that regulated state? And can we hold for them and listen to them and hear them and be there for them without, and this is tough, man, because I asked you this earlier, but can that actually exist where we don't let our stuff come into the present moment? I believe your answer was, yeah, we can. And it is possible, and I agree, it is. With great challenge, with work, with effort. And so that to me is holding space. I think the world does a very poor job of holding space for each other. And hey, my hand's up for that as well, man. Like, I am activated and triggered when something is dissatisfying to me, or I am feeling threatened. I can't hold space in the way that I know I could, or the way that I have in the past.
And being able to recognize that in the moment and say, look, you know what, I want to hold space for you, but I can't, I'm too activated. That's at least deferring to conscious awareness and being like, look, I am too activated to hold space for you. Let's slow this down, and let me see if I can find that way for me to slow into your, tap into your nervous system, feel the infinite, feel the divine, and then try again, right? And so, we tend to think this term holding space, I think, has been bastardized, which is, I guess, your point about, we wanted to get here so bad. It's been bastardized as sort of this faux masculine badge of honor. You know what I mean? Of like, I'm holding space for her storm. I hear this all the time. And really what's happening is you're freezing. You're in a freeze. I see so many men that say they're holding space and they're really freezing. And I'm sure this happens for women too, but they're not holding space for their partner. They're thinking. When can I say what I need to say?
They're not present.
They're not present. And so I actually I'm gonna. I don't think I've ever said this, but I think I'm gonna really just put a staff in the sand and say, if you are disconnected from love and consciousness, the infinite, the divine, whatever you want to call it, you are not holding space. You are literally just staying still or in your pattern in some maybe imperceivable way, but you're in your pattern. And this is what people, this is what passes for holding space, right? Part of what, I run a 3-year teacher training program, and I literally, in the second year, most of the training is how do you assist in a very active practice environment so your nervous system can get trained to what it's like to be in a very active space. And that trains, because it takes something to regulate. It's like you're in a bit of a war zone, man. People's subconscious, their shadows, their sexual energy, it's all coming out.
Emotionally volatile.
And so to train your nervous system to down-regulate while all hell is breaking loose takes time, man. And we literally take a year to train people in various ways to do that. And I think I think that's one of the areas we'd call it embodied coaching, relationship coaching, sexual intimacy coaching, that there's just not enough training. When I came into this, I mean, we were expected for 3, 4, 5 years to assist before we started teaching. Because my teachers thought, if you can't hold the space in an assistant realm, you certainly aren't going to be able to hold it in. And they were right. They were right. And
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. And I think most people don't want to wait that long. I certainly didn't. So
Not the world that we live in.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was one of those people who's like, oh, I'm ready to go. I'm around I already know it. I've done it. I've done it for 2 years, 3 years, and what happens is, just like in intimate relationships, somebody will show up in your workshop that triggers the fuck out of you, and you will be up against your edge of holding space or practice.
Big time.
Yeah.
You said something interesting earlier around, if you're in a position to not hold space, then can you say, I'm not in a position to hold space for you right now because I'm activated, I'm triggered.
Yeah.
That is a very mature, evolved way of being. Now, this is interesting. Imagine, as a coach, you saying that to your client. Has that ever happened to you?
It's happened in a workshop where I've had somebody get up, like a third year, fourth year student,
Yep.
Him and I have this kind of
Yep.
dad thing going on, right? And he knows it and I know it, and every once in a while it rears its head. And I was able to say, look, man, like, I can't hold space. The way you're coming at me is making me really defensive, and I can't actually engage with you right now. So
What a teaching point for everyone there.
Yeah. And it was good. So so let's work. So the second piece to that, let's say you say, I can't hold space for you. Let's take care of our nervous systems.
Yes.
Right? Like, so let's just look at me. I'll look at you, man. Let's just feel each other. Let's take some breaths for 2-3 minutes. Let's let everything calm down. And then you tell me what you need. And that's another little pro tip of getting into somebody's nervous system is like, tell me what you need right now.
You're making it about them and their needs, and the ego aspect of self that is all wrapped up in story, pain, and past wants to be heard, wants to be seen. And from that perspective, you're giving them an opportunity to actually be seen, potentially for the first time, because they were never seen by their parents, or they were seldom seen by the people that they looked up to, that they wanted to be seen by, that they deified perhaps. That there is a deep healing moment in and of itself.
Yeah.
So powerful, but we forget, I think we forget this in intimate relationship or as a coach or a teacher. We forget that if we take ownership of saying, hey, I'm triggered right now, I'm becoming defensive, can we pause so I can deeper support you? We think we are going to be perceived as less than or not a great coach because we don't know it all.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
We're human.
Yeah.
We're fallible. Like, we're going to fail. Like, it's part of fucking being human.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is new in the teaching, coaching world, because I think, I don't know if Chogyam Trungpa or David Data or Ram Dass would have actually admitted that. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Ram Dass would have. But it's new that now our limitations are actually, when they're owned, I think what the world wants from us, whether it's our clients, whether it's our partners, what they want from us, and I think this is part of good masculine leadership, this is part of what I talk about in the book, is that if we're aware of our limitations and we're aware of our limitations' impact on the moment, and we bring that into conscious awareness, we're leading.
Yeah.
We're leading from a very deep place, and that could be in a relational moment, it could be in a teaching moment, and that is something very specific I'm trying to teach men, because men are in this space of not knowing how to lead in their life, how to lead in their relationships, how to lead with very empowered feminine partners, when appropriate. And so I think this is the whole other conversation about masculine leadership, but I think it's important to understand, what it is to lead from your masculine and from your feminine. But we can get into that later. So
I definitely want to go into more of that masculine feminine dynamic and polarity and so forth, because I know you've touched on it a number of times, and you're also really well known for that, brother, and you're really fucking good at it. So I can speak from personal experience and also just being in this space for 22 years and seeing different coaches and many charlatans along the way, and you're definitely not one of them. So just to validate your authenticity. Third pillar, third principle. I'm very excited to hear what this is.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's sexual polarity, right? Sexual. So just to reframe it.
Yes.
So sacred intimacy has three pillars. The first pillar is intimacy, sameness in the human form, sameness in the spiritual form. The second one is a devotion to each other's nervous system, right? A real devotion to your partner's nervous system over your own in certain moments. And then the third is a commitment to sexual polarity, which is the arc of energy that is the life force of sexual intimacy, right? It's the juice that unlocks so much joy and love and desire and capacity. And without all three, it's like a stool that has one leg that's kind of off, right? Yeah. And you'll know it. And most very few couples have all three. Yeah. It's a rare thing, right? Yeah. I've had moments in my life where I've been in a relationship and I was like, wow, we're soaring here. Yeah. But to hold that is very, very hard over a long period of time.
Yeah, I very much hear that, man, and it is definitely part of the effort and part of the work, right? And I like that you say that, because I think what we're doing is we're tempering expectations, because someone could hear that and say, wow, these three principles, of sacred intimacy, there's devotion to one's nervous system, and there's a sexual polarity. I need to have all three to be a valuable human or a worthy human. No. If you need anything, it's to have awareness around it and a commitment to these. Please tell me if you disagree. To commitment to these pillars, to explore them within yourself and within your intimate partnership.
If that's a value, right? If artistic relationship and love is your value, some people might be, no, fuck all that. I want to go make a bunch of money, or I want to go do this. I want to sail around the world by myself, or I want to sleep with as many people as I can. But if you're committed to the art of sacred intimacy, as I would call it, then these are the three pillars. Yeah. So the last one being sexual polarity, which I'll define as the arc of opposites, right? One partner amplifies the pole of feminine. Could be a man, could be a woman. Other doesn't have to be, cisgendered regular roles, although most of the time it is. One partner amplifies the feminine pole, turns up the charge. The other partner turns up the charge on the masculine pole. And with these two poles charged up, the arc of energy that passes between them gets super amplified. And so that's what we work on in workshops. That's a very specific kind of yogic practice. Yes. And it's fucking beautiful. Yeah. I love my job.
Yeah. I hear that. And there's definitely a portion of what I teach, and I'm not sure how you teach that specifically and how that's evolved over the years, but there's deep resonance from me. I'm not even going to actually ask you around practices. What I am going to ask you, though, is can you add some flavor and color and definition to amplifying the feminine pole? What does that mean? Yeah. And amplifying the masculine pole. Yeah. I think that would actually be really helpful to our students. Yeah.
So amplifying so let's think of this as a spectrum, right? Yeah. So on one side of the spectrum is let's call it the masculine core, right? And on the other side of the spectrum is the feminine core. And these are reflected in nature, right? So I think if we think about, a black hole, or like dense emptiness, it's the most masculine thing, right? And then as we move towards, let's say, a mountain, right, and then maybe a redwood, right? And as we move along the spectrum, then we go from a redwood to an oak tree, and then to maybe bamboo, which is starting to get a little more movement to it, right? And then to, on this side of the spectrum, exploding starlight, right? So to amplify the natural elements of the cosmos through our body, the natural masculine, feminine, in nature through our body, creates that amplification. Another way to look at it is the feminine principles of love and pleasure, right? Through a body, could be a male body, female body,
the physical body,
any physical body. And so pleasure, so the partner holding pleasure and love, like transmitting. So femininity is the transmission of those aspects, the natural aspects of the feminine, energetic, love, pleasure, devotion. The masculine transmission is one of depth, consciousness, clarity, stillness, infinite expanse, right? And the way to amplify them is to make them fuller in your body. And that's a practice.
Personal practice.
That's a practice. So, and when you see, it seems sort of esoteric now, but when you actually see it in two bodies and then you start to feel that energetic, start to amp up, it's very palpable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would equate that to, for me, it's an exposure and a proficiency. If you spend 50 years fixing mountain bikes, you're going to be able to do that in your sleep. If you have a personal practice that you're devoted to, that is, as an example, amplifying the feminine energetic and all that that entails, after a period of time, it will naturally, organically just come through you and you will be that thing in motion.
Yeah. You can, or you could do it just with your fingers. Like it could be so, like, you know, a good masculine practitioner can basically pin somebody with their eyes and kind of, you know, go deep, penetrate them deeply just with eye gazing, right? A feminine practitioner can just move her fingers, right? And all of a sudden, like, your body comes alive. And so, yeah, this is a yoga, this is an art, this is like becoming a master tennis player, you know, or a master musician. And most people don't look at sex that way. Most people think like, oh, I'll find the right person, there'll be a lot of attraction, we'll always be turned on, you know, and we know now that after a year or two, that dissipates, especially after children, especially, you know what I mean? All those things. So nobody ever taught us that it is an art form that can be and should be, and I would even argue has to be maintained as a very valuable practice. In fact, I mean, what's more valuable really when we think about it, you know, than sexual intimacy, you know, for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that if an individual is attempting to or desiring to amplify their masculine pole, the masculine core, is there room for them to explore their feminine core within them as well?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because so what I find is most men will come either confused or disconnected from their masculine core, meaning they don't really understand a connection to consciousness. They don't understand how to ground their physical body. They don't understand, you know, how to use breath. They don't understand sort of clarity as expressed through the body. So there's a tendency first to give them the structural component of the masculine on my part. Once they've learned the structure and the practice of amplifying their masculine, then they can start to, you know, amplify their feminine. Most men actually have a pretty well-defined feminine.
Why would you say that is?
Just because over the last 50 years, men have been taught to feel more, to express more, to, you know what I mean? You could go to Burning Man, right? I mean, you know, it's like, so men have been taught to amplify more of their feminine, and women from post-feminism have been taught to amplify most of their masculine. Nothing wrong with it, except if it's done unconsciously, it creates this sort of reverse polarity that people are like, why don't we want to fuck? You know, why are we not attracted to each other? And so what I end up having to do is to take them into their masculine, teach them, to get them familiar with their masculine, what that's like, and then amplify, and then create a let's call it an integral container for their own feminine. And then to go deep into each, go deep as they want. Nobody has to do this. Sure. This is because they want to expand their own capacity in both directions.
Yes, yeah. It is a conscious choice that they are making.
So so just to give an image of this, it's like, consider like the mountain weeping, right? Like so brokenhearted, so full of love, so devotional to the moment. Like it's that kind of experience, like consciousness weeping because it's so full and so...
We're about to go deep again, John, because what I'm hearing you saying, you've just collapsed duality and there's a oneness that has occurred now. Fucking know it. You know what you just did then.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know about duality. I don't know. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So two interesting points I have there. often people will come to me, men will come to me and they'll say, I want to tap more into my feminine, or my partner or my wife has asked me to be more feminine. And I'm always weary when that happens. And I'll fast track and I'll say, if you practice, first I'll identify and help them identify and determine what their more, I guess, natural propensity is. Is it more masculine or is it more feminine? And if it's more masculine, which in most cases it is, I ask them and I support them in developing their masculine core, developing their healthy masculine essence. And by default, what tends to happen is they're able to tap into the aspect of them, of their own femininity that their wives are asking for, because they're able to relate differently because they're more authentic to themselves. So they can relate more authentically to their partners, which I think is beautifully empowering for the couple. And the other thing that I wanted to say is everything that you're sharing here today, and so much of what you're sharing here today, I should say, is so beneficial and relevant to our students because it's helping them understand part of the human condition, right? And in doing so, that is, to me, a contributor in that individual assessing others in a more with greater efficacy. So there's a lot of value in all of that, that which you've shared. Now, we touched on something earlier around, I said human qualities first, masculine, feminine, secondary, right? We also receive questions around, and even me personally, I will receive questions around polarity and sexuality and masculine, feminine dynamics. And before I even address any of that, I go to, let me just check what's underneath that. Let me check wounding, inner child stuff, childhood experiences, developmental progressions, trauma, abuse. Let me check all of that may be impacting the way they are sexually relating as adults.
Right.
And I'm going to be a little ambiguous here, what commentary would you have on that? Or thoughts on that?
So I think what you're talking about is remember the three pillars, the realm of intimacy, right? Human first, and then get into the masculine feminine. Because the way to think about the masculine feminine dynamics is that they are like nutrients for our nervous system, right? And so if you're a masculine being, right, and your partner's highly masculine most of the time, doesn't run a lot of pleasure through their body, doesn't really feel a lot of energy, doesn't express a lot of feeling, you are going to get malnourished. And that is different than the wound, right? The wounds are real for sure, and they definitely need to be looked at, and the trauma and all that stuff.
I think they amplify the present moment.
Probably do, yes. So if you're malnourished and wounded, you're fucked. You know what I mean, right? So you got to think of these as gifts, as sexual nutrients, as relational nutrients. I'll give you a good example. Like, so many women are like, I'm so fucking tired of leading. Like, can he just fucking lead? Can he just decide where we're going and take care of it and plan it for us? And you know what I mean? What they're saying is, I'm so malnourished that the gift of masculine leadership, of his awareness and planning,
of what she needs, and what she may desire,
what she might need to feel into it, to plan for it, to create space. It's a nutrient. It goes beyond just a desire. It's actually a need. And so I think it's important. It's important for us to see what are the innate, I'm going to call them innate, right? Human needs. And this is without sexual preference or sexual identity or any of that. We all have the need for certain energetics, just like the natural world's energetics. And so when couples are often complaining, they're complaining about their lack of nutrient. like for example, devotion. Like if your partner is not devotional to you, not bringing you that beautiful feminine gift, then you are feeling malnourished. If you're not getting certain kinds of dark sexual energy as a nutrient, you'll feel malnourished. And so oftentimes what I see in relationships that are going astray is there's both things. All three of those fucking things are happening. The intimacy piece is kind of broken and kinked. They're feeling totally malnourished sexually in the relational realm, and they don't give a fuck about each other's nervous system. And that's pretty much, that's where a lot of couples end up, by the time they get to me. And so we have to kind of repair each of those things kind of simultaneously.
And you would start, well, firstly, let me just pause because John just did this. there was an image for what just happened now was just that, just so you all know.
Yeah.
So, but would you say, where would you start with, would you start with your 3 pillars then? If someone comes to you where they're malnourished, I love your analogy, by the way, there's a nutrient deficiency there, and to see that as nutrients, it's very powerful, by the way. Well, for me it is anyway. That really lands very strongly. So what would you suggest for a couple coming to a coach, or even coming to you where they are so malnourished in that way? Is there anything that you would lead them with? And I mean, I guess it's really developing safety in the relationship again, in themselves, right?
Yeah, it's really got to be like the nervous system thing is key. So they've got to, so it's not just, part of the nervous system work is, we didn't touch on this, but part of this is repair.
For sure.
Right. So repairing past wounds and there's a lot of great, in the relationship. And that, because if you've still got a wound, a gaping wound, your parasympathetic is not going to kick in. So, there's a lot of good work out there. Stan Tatkin, Terry Real. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff being done in this realm, but I try to take that stuff and make it embodied. You know what I mean? Like I want to make it embodied practice. I do the same. Yeah. And so the first thing I'll do is I'll be like, how do you soothe each other's nervous system? And I might have her stroke his chest, right? I might have him, put his hands on her legs and say those safety words to her. I might have them, the back of the neck is another place that's really close to the amygdala and so there's certain, bellies, like the front of the body, is super important for soothing the nervous system. So I'll have them work on that. And then because sexual polarity really doesn't work long-term if there's all these wounds that are still
sure, if there's no safety. I mean, and everything you're touching to in terms of the nurturance canal, right here, such a place for healing and safety, right? With self and with others. What would you say if a couple comes to you where they've really lost that sexual spark, they don't find, one of them or both of them don't find each other attractive sexually? Do you believe that is repairable? They can come back to finding attraction again?
Totally. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. And I will say that there's a fourth piece that I didn't put in the
fourth pillar.
I wouldn't call it a fourth pillar, but
An exciting new pillars.
but I do think this is a crucial piece, which is that their personal practice, right? And I could make this a fourth pillar, but if they are malnourished, oftentimes it's because they're malnourished individually, right? And so I'll often see men, giving it all to their relationship and not taking enough time out to nourish themselves with other men, or time in nature, or space of no demand. The masculine needs space with no demand. And the feminine partner is malnourished and overwhelmed and having to carry too much of the burden. And so their personal practice it's like trying to give something you haven't got. Like you can't give nutrients. I can't give you the nutrients of my full clarity and presence and grounded depth if I don't feel it, if I'm not experiencing it. So that piece of, just to answer your question about what I'll have couples do, is I'll often have them work with, separate, feminine and feminine masculine practices on their own. Then we'll do nervous system repair, and then I'll lead them through some polarity practices. And once they feel safe and in their body and full, the polarity piece is easy.
So safety is the healing, is what I'm hearing.
Well, I'd say safety, and also like they've got to be alive in their own body, vital in their own body, right? And so many couples and so many people in general don't take responsibility for their own vitality, and that I think is a crucial problem in the world, and so for teachers, for new coaches, that would be part of what I would say, like rate yourself, like how vital are you? I mean, I know you work super hard at it. Like we're working on it every day. I'm working on it, 2 hours a day, meditation, practice, I mean, it's a real commitment to be vital in today's world. And so how much vitality are you bringing, into your body and into the world? And hopefully that's something that coaches, this next generation of coaches that you guys are trying to serve, knows to do.
I hear much of what we've spoken to today, it comes back to one's internal practice and attunement with self and expanding one's own self and grounding one's own self and being in one's body and really learning to navigate the world and the complexity and the beauty and the simplicity of relationships from a place of deeper awareness within self, a more expanded sense of consciousness, and also a willingness to actually want to be with self and then be in the world. And as you said earlier, if sacred intimacy is a value for you and a priority for you, the three pillars that you described and that you shared could really help you evolve that practice.
Absolutely.
And as a coach that wants to work in the realm of relationships and sacred intimacy, sexuality, when you refine that within yourself, man, I'm just going to say, you're going to be a 7-figure coach, like literally.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, you better not coach what you are not practicing.
Big time.
You know what I mean? Like one of the things that one of the reasons why I'm good at what I do is literally my first workshop in 2008. I met a girl and we were a woman and we were together for 3 years, going to workshops, practicing this stuff, right? Every relationship I've ever had has been, for the last 13 years of doing this work, has been deep practice relationship, right? Even dating now, I'm dating now. I'm with people who practice, right? Because it is that important for me to live this. And so if you're wanting to be in this realm, you better be practicing what it is that you want to give, because otherwise you're just regurgitating information. You're not transmitting true knowledge. Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing for coaches and new coaches to know. Like, get all the information. I'm sure you guys are giving them. You guys are giving them incredible amounts of information and experience, but they've got to get on the fucking mat.
100%, man. I honestly, that to me, what you just shared now is probably one of the biggest takeaways of today's conversation is that right there. That to me is the foundation. I mean, if we're not well practiced as individuals and we're not practicing what we preach, we are inauthentic. And I don't mean that as a buzzword. I mean, we are disconnected from our message. And as a result of being disconnected from our message, we're not being heard. And actually what we're probably doing is reactivating old wounds of not being heard. And which reinforces a limiting belief of not being enough. And then we want to fight harder and force the thing that we're not actually just simply moving into.
Yeah, and for people in this realm, the embodiment realm, there's a huge danger zone there, because if we were just in a strategic coaching thing, if we were at the forum, you know what I mean, and you were writing stuff and you're writing stuff, you're taking notes, you're taking it in mentally, but we're talking about the realm of embodiment. So somebody who's doing what you just talked about, but then has some skill to open people's bodies, is now pouring into those open bodies their wounds. They're transmitting their pattern. You know what I mean? And look, I've done it. I've seen really good teachers do it. But nobody really talks about it, and it's a huge danger in this kind of embodied coaching realm, that if you're not practicing what you preach and you're working from patterns of wounds and you're giving that to open bodies, you're doing damage.
Simply put, hurt people hurt people.
That's one way.
Really. And there are coaches out there, and the students that we are, the ethos that we're cultivating here is one of, hey, do your inner work, be in your personal practice, be integrous with who you are and where you're at. Don't overstate yourself. Know that you are in a position of authority and power. Even in an intimate relationship, whatever pole you hold, you are in a position of authority and power, as is your partner. And there's a sovereign responsibility that takes place that if we are not aware, or we choose to not be aware of what we want to bring into that relationship and what we're willing to look at within ourselves, we then are saying, I don't care about you. Essentially, that's what we're saying. I don't care about you in the way that I could, because I'm unwilling or unable, or I'm too hurt to look at my own stuff, to actually be in greater integrity. And that's a painful thing that we see in the world in so many different ways. So this work that you're doing, John, is so crucial and so important. I've personally experienced your workshops. I know you as a friend and as a brother. I not only speak very highly of you, I see you as a man in his work that I mean, your example earlier of being in a workshop and pausing and saying, hey, we need to pause right now because I'm being triggered by you to your student. Brother, that's fucking everything. Like that right there, the thing I said earlier about the takeaway and that takeaway right there, I mean, if that's all anyone got from listening to this and they really, really let that sink in, that's everything.
Oh, thanks,
at least
man.
to me.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Man, I want to be mindful of our space here, and I just want to say big thank you for you being here. We could definitely go a lot deeper in so many different areas, and we will now because we're going to get some food.
Yeah,
we're definitely going to do this again. We'll do it again. Our students are going to want a part 2 for sure.
Yeah.
Where can they find you? All your details. We'll obviously have it in our notes as well in the back end, but anything else you want to share as well?
Yeah, just to find teachers and find this is something that I did when because a lot of people say well, how did you get to this place, right? Well, I jumped into as many workshops with as many teachers that inspired me as I could. And so if this particular type of coaching inspires your students, I would say find teachers that inspire you, get into as many workshops with them as you can, become a student. Don't just try to do this program and like put your shingle out, like fucking become a student for real, for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You have time. You have time. It's important. It's really, people think they don't, and especially people in their 30s. I have a lot of students that are in their 30s. I'm like, you fucker, you have time. Chill out, deepen, really get into, really become a master, become a master of this. And so I would say enjoy your role as a student, like really take being a student seriously and don't hurry to getting to be a master. People will find you. If you become really good at being a practitioner, people will seek you out. I've just seen it over and over again. So I guess that's my senior words of wisdom for your students.
Receive, man. I think it's a very valuable teaching as well, very valuable principle to live by actually, is to be that student and trust in your mastery because people will come. Where can people find you?
JohnWineland.com. Wine like you drink, land like you live on. Just the website. Website's got all the information. I run a teacher training program that's a year-long, very embodied 4-workshop kind of deep dive thing. I run a men's program that's 6 months of another deep dive kind of thing, and a women's program. So if you want to get deeper into what I do, come and find us, and we'll set you up.
Thank you, brother, for being here. I appreciate you.
Yeah, much love, man.
So much love to you, man.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.